to you, Abby.
Well, many thanks, Julie. Indeed, pertinent questions being raised there by various exhibitors here at the Kenya Trade Week happening at KICC. And let me now bring in my panel. Well, as I mentioned earlier, we were having the Cabinet Secretary, that is Peter Munya, who has had to step out for a very urgent matter. But of course, we still have with us some very able men to drive the conversation. And I'm now joined by Jaswinder Bedi, the chairman of the Export Promotion Council. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
We also have Chris Diaz, who is director at Brand Kenya. And we'll be sort of trying to get to the bottom of some of the questions that are being raised by various exporters that are attending this trade week. And Jaswinder, let me just pick it up from you. You've been here throughout the morning. Right now, we've seen the Deputy President, who sort of graced this particular event, talk about how we need to grow the domestic market as well as sort of push the manufacturing agenda so that we can be able to industrialize quicker and we can access more markets. Perhaps, what are your quick takeaways?
Well, my quick takeaways are the government is totally committed. The what is very clear, which to me is normally the biggest problem. People don't know where they're going. The what is very clear, the how to is what we are defining now, and the what for the manufacturing industry is that by 2022, we want to move from 8.9% of contribution to GDP to 15%. That means we have to grow by 36% per annum year on year. But you know what? It's a tall order, but no issues. Once we know that it's a tall order and we have to deliver those results by 2022, we will find ways of doing it. We will be doing business unusual because business as usual will not give us the growth that we're looking for. So to me is let's not do more of the same, but let's radically transform the way we are doing business so that we can have 15% contribution, manufacturing contribution to our GDP and grow the jobs.
Interesting. And of course, Diaz, you do a lot of issues to do with how we can brand Kenya out there. And one of the big conversations that most of the exhibitors are mentioning is that when it comes to selling the good things that Kenya has, we don't have a structured approach towards this. And as a government agency, how can we turn the narrative?
Thank you, Abby, and big jumbo to all the Kenyans watching this show. We have seen a very structured approach by Brand Kenya, and in conjunction working with Export Promotion Council, the chairman has spoken about it. And what the Deputy President and the Cabinet Secretary have spoken today, and also all the teams across Brand Kenya and across all the marketing bodies for Kenya are focusing very much on a structured, consolidated marketing strategy. And that's why today it's very exciting that we have launched the Made in Kenya identity mark, which will allow us to have a consolidated front out there, which is more about emotional pride. And Kenyans are taking ownership about Kenyan products, and we also will be able to realize a consolidated marketing strategy to increase revenues of exports across Africa and into the rest of the markets.
All right. And Jazz, you are very particular when it comes to numbers. And if you look at how Kenya has been trading, and of course we have a very serious deficit when it comes to what we import against what we export. And of course Diaz mentioning that there is an attempt toward this. But the truth of the matter is just most of the issues that are pushing investors away as simple things like the cost of electricity, the cost of labor, and even the red tape that comes along. And how do we maneuver through this? Is there a commitment, and how do we drive this forward?
Well, I think if we look at the numbers, you're right. Last year we imported $17 billion worth of imports, and we exported about $6 billion. So the deficit is $11 billion, which is a lot. That means we are importing 2 times as much as we're exporting. So the balance of payment and the deficit between imports and export is large. As EPC, our target is very clear. We want to grow exports 15% year on year, and that's in our strategic plan.
Yeah.
And in the next 12 years, by the, in conjunction with Vision 2030, we want to have a zero-sum game. That means our exports will equal imports. Yes, you have mentioned that we have challenges and we have certain issues. Fundamentally, in one word, whatever you've said is competitiveness.
Yes.
But since we realize what constitutes to competitiveness, and those pillars are energy, logistics, the bill of materials that we are all using largely are driven by world prices. But everything else besides the bill of materials, that includes the cost of finance, logistics, power, productivity, we're working on all these pillars to make sure that we globally benchmark ourselves and to become globally competitive. So if you look at the tagline of EPC, we've changed the tagline as to become globally competitive, inspiring global trade. So we really don't want to be competing. We want to compete with the best of the world. We want to compete with Asia. We want to compete with India. We want to compete with China. And we need to take some radical decisions. I mean, in Africa, we are the #1 exporter under AGOA. Brilliant. But, in the U.S. market context, it's 0.4% of U.S. market pie. So it's, in a way, it's shameful that we have such a huge market at our doorstep, but we're only exporting 0.4%. So when we look at the rest of Africa, we say, wow, we're doing really well. When we look at Bangladesh, we're not. So I think those are the paradigms that are changing, and that's what this Kenya Trade Week is highlighting, that, guys, we have to do things differently to get different results.
You've raised very important questions there. And looking at the current status of affairs, it seems that we need to really sort of go back to the drawing board, especially when it comes to the policy perspective, because some of the key concerns that are coming out is issues to do with tariffs. Why should we encourage tariffs in a day and age where we're seeing the world is actually opening up to having products from all corners of the world? And you are in the export business as well as Diaz in various products. But really, how do we open up and, of course, deal with the policy issues?
Well, if you look at the tariff book, specifically tariffs, I think East Africa has probably got the most progressive tariff book in the world. We have a 3-band structure, 0, 10, 25, 0% for raw materials, 10% for intermediate goods, and 25% for finished. I don't think it can get any simpler. So we have a very simple tariff book, and it works on the degree of processing. So the more you process, the more tariff protection you get. But what we are noticing across the world now is a new wave of protectionism, which is actually going to start impacting us if we don't do something about it. And we have seen it in the US with tariff lines that they are being imposing on China, for example, or on steel, on different products. And we saw it in the UK with Brexit.
Sure.
So we are noticing a new design of free trade. And I think we need to just wait and see and make no changes at the moment and see how this new world trade order unravels.
I see Diaz is itching to respond. Please chip in.
Well, I think also, and I agree with what Jas is saying, but if you look at the Africa trade to the rest of the world, we are still at about 15%. Both the Asia and the American markets, 58-60% of growth of trade. So there's a lot of opportunities, and we need to integrate this also with the government's strategy of the Big Four. And what I think we need to really come out with is create employment. And to create employment in the manufacturing industry is greatly going to help the country, both in terms of entrepreneurship, because we also need manufacturers to set Kenyans to become distributors. And those is entrepreneurship. And then we also have high quality of products, and then brand Kenya coming into market. Sorry about that, Jas.
Just carry on.
Yeah, so I think a lot around what he's saying is to increase trade. Tariff regimes have to be looked at, costings have to be looked at.
Yeah.
But the greatest opportunity and exciting today is we've come together and we appreciate the Kenyan brands, the Kenyan products, and to see how we can work together with the government and the private sector.
All right. And Jazz, one of the big conversations that many people would want to see the Export Promotion Council taking up is how do we empower the SMEs in Kisii, that SME in Kakamega, that SME in Kisumu. And of course, they have potential. And it's something I want us to discuss. We want to proceed on a quick break as you ponder over this. That will be my first question to you.
I'm ready.
All right. Well, we are covering for you the Kenya Trade Week. This is the second day of the week-long event happening here at the KICC. I've been speaking to Jaswinda Bedi, the chairman of the Export Promotion Council, as well as Chris Diaz, who is a director at Brand Kenya. And we continue to keep it here at the KICC. And my colleague, Julia Wino, is still walking through the exhibitors and just hearing their stories when it comes to what are some of the challenges facing Kenya's export-import markets. For now, we will proceed on a quick commercial break. Remember, you can engage with us on our social media handles at KTN News, or you can tweet me at Agina Abi, and we'll be able to sample some of your views as we move along with this broadcast. But for now, let's go for that quick commercial break.